We know he has been trying to put himself out there, saying his record in the Crown Prosecution Service, his family. He's been doing events, but Rishi Sunak, he thinks that's a weakness he can focus
Damien,
on.
thanks very much indeed. We will be back very soon.
Hello, I'm Ben Thompson. This is The Context on BBC News.
Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future. To decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty.
On the 4th of July, you have the choice. And together, we can stop the chaos, we can turn the page, we can start to rebuild Britain and change our country.
If people want to get rid of the Conservative MP, they need to vote Liberal Democrat, and they can get that local champion that will stand up for them.
This is it, a general election is on. Power will leave this most powerful of streets, and you'll be able to decide whether he stays or whether he goes.
A UK election date is set. We'll have a special edition of The Context for you tonight. We'll discuss a busy day in Westminster and ask what happens next with journalist and author Jenny Kleeman and Westminster editor at The Lead, Zoe Grunwald. But first, let's bring you up to date with the latest BBC News headlines. And we now know Britain will go to the polls on July the 4th. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said only his Conservatives could deliver bold action and held his record on the economy. Leader of the opposition, that's the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, said that 14 years of Conservative government had led to chaos and it was now time for change. Elsewhere, the White House has reiterated its opposition to a unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state after 3 European countries announced they would do so. Palestinians have hailed the move by Norway, Ireland and Spain as historic. More than 40 high-ranking foreign delegations have been taking part in a ceremony in Tehran to commemorate President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash. Prayers were led by the nation's supreme leader. The former boss of the Post Office has admitted that the evidence she gave to MPs in 2012 looking into problems with the Horizon IT system was not true. Paula Venables broke down as she was questioned over the scandal. And so we begin with the big story of the day here in the UK. News that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has announced a general election will be held. It'll be on July the 4th. Speaking in a rainy Downing Street, battling against music blaring from a nearby street, it's probably not the image the Prime Minister would have wanted to kickstart his election campaign. But the announcement does end months of uncertainty over when UK voters would go to the polls. Here is some of that announcement from the Prime Minister. So Liberal Democrats leader Ed Davey there. So a busy day in Westminster. Let's take you straight there now. My colleague Geeta Guru-Murphy is there. And Geeta, you've been following events as they've unfolded throughout the afternoon, and it's been a really busy day, but ends a lot of speculation about when the UK will go to the polls. We finally have a date. Geeta, really good to have you there. It's been a really busy day. We're going to let you go for now. Get some rest. It's the start of a busy election campaign. Really good to have you there, Geeta Guru-Murphy. Thank you. So let's talk about some of those issues with the panel tonight. Journalist and author Jenny Kleeman is with me. Research Director at the Stockbrokers XTB, that's Kathleen Brooks, and also Westminster Editor at The Lead, that's Zoe Grunwald. Evening to you all. There's a lot for us to get through on the programme tonight because quite a day it has been in Westminster. And Zoe, let me start with you. What do you make of how today played out? Probably not what the Prime Minister wanted, but we now know that we will go to the polls in July. Talk me through the day. How did you see it? Yes, the economy, clearly one of the big issues in this election. We'll talk about that and some of the other key areas in this battleground race shortly. But for now, thank you. Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You're watching a special edition of The Context tonight as the UK Prime Minister announces that the UK will go to the polls on July the 4th. Let's talk now to Adam Payne, who's political editor at Politics Home. Adam, good to have you with us. A lot for us to digest right now. And I want to start, first of all, not with that announcement from the Prime Minister in Downing Street, but this first sort of campaign rally that he held this evening in East London. It was really him kicking off his pitch for why he should be the Prime Minister in July. But there were very few opportunities for the media there to ask any sort of questions. He had the cabinet around him, there were people with placards, but we didn't really get much sense about what the Conservatives would look like after this election, did we?
And I think that is where we can make a real difference. But we'll also be challenging in places like Sheffield Hallam.
Christian, I'm going to jump in. Time is really tight. Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for being with us on The Context tonight. Headlines coming up next. Hello, I'm Ben Thompson. This is The Context on BBC News. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak launches the Conservative election campaign after calling a snap general election for July the 4th. Where we start this half hour, the story of the day in the UK. News that the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has announced that the UK will go to the polls on July the 4th. Let's take you live to Downing Street. My colleague Geeta Gurumurthy is there. And Geeta, you've been following the story of the day. Farcical at some points in the rain with the loud music, but the Conservatives and Rishi Sunak launching his campaign in somewhat drier circumstances a little later this evening. Just talk us through what went on today. Geeta, thank you. Let's talk to the panel. Jenny, Kathleen and Zoe are still with us. And there's so much for us to talk about. And we'll come on to some of the issues in just a second. I want to talk first of all, though, Jenny, about the number of MPs that are standing down at this election. I've just looked at the numbers. 65 Conservatives, 20 Labour, 9 SNP and Independents. We might even see that number tick up, depending how this campaigning goes. But a significant number of Conservatives, some would suggest going before they're pushed. There's a verdict, isn't it? More of the same. That's not what the politicians are telling us tonight, is it? We'll talk some more in a moment, but around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You're watching a special edition of The Context here on BBC News on the day that we learn that the UK will go to the polls on July the 4th. With me, the panel still. Jenny is with me, also Kathleen and Zoe. So let's talk some more about what we might expect. So the campaigning really gets underway. There's not a lot of time though, is there, Zoe? So 5 weeks and there's all to play for. And I want to pick up on that point about this being about choices, not choices just for the electorate, but choices of what the politicians decide to spend money on. We often hear that idea that, well, there's no more money, there's not much wiggle room, but it really is about choices of what we stand for as a country and what our priorities should be. Jenny, stay with us. We will continue this conversation, but I just want to say goodbye to viewers who are watching around the world. So we'll talk some more briefly about what we've learned today. But of course, 5 years of Conservative government. We've been looking back at some of, it's been 13 years, but 5 years of pretty radical change in terms of the people at the top of government. So let's take a look back at what the last 5 years have brought us.
What this may do, certainly in the near term, there had been expectations that the NatWest share sale would happen.
Yeah.
That's probably canned for now.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of time, is there, left before they can get these things through? A couple of days, I think. So some of those key policies they might want to get through. Time is tight, but thank you so much for being with us. To Kathleen, to Zoe and to Jenny, really grateful to have you on the panel. That is your context tonight. See you very soon. Bye-bye.
Hello there. For most of us, Wednesday was a